Welcome back, everybody, and in this video we're going to be reading Reddit's craziest roommate stories. I just started this new world and I'm new to keyboard and mouse, so bear with me if my Minecraft gameplay isn't the best yet. But let's read these stories. So sit back, relax, try to fall asleep if you want. Let's get straight into it. The first story is my roommate let his girlfriend move in without asking. So this happened about 2 years ago when I was in college. I moved into a 3-bedroom apartment with 2 guys I barely knew. We all answered the same housing ad, met once for coffee, and figured we'd get along well enough. The rent was cheap, the location was close to campus, and none of us were looking to make lifelong friends. We just wanted roommates who paid on time. For the first month, everything was honestly perfect. The apartment stayed clean, nobody touched anyone else's food, bills were split evenly. If somebody invited people over, they'd send a quick text first. It was probably the easiest living situation I'd ever had. Then one Friday, one of my roommates, I'll call him Tyler, mentioned his girlfriend was staying over for the weekend. Nobody cared. That's a completely normal thing. She came over Friday night. We all introduced ourselves, watched a movie for a little while, and then everyone went to bed. She seemed nice. Saturday morning, I left to visit my parents for the weekend. When I came back Sunday evening, she was still there. Again, no big deal. It was the weekend. Monday morning, I woke up early for class. I walked into the kitchen, and she was making coffee. She smiled and said good morning like she'd lived there forever. I figured maybe she'd end up staying one extra night. Then Tuesday came. Still here. Wednesday. Still here. By Friday, she had been in our apartment for an entire week. At first, I didn't want to say anything because I thought maybe she was just going through something. Maybe she had problems with her own apartment. Maybe it was temporary. But then the little things started changing. One morning, I went to brush my teeth and noticed another toothbrush sitting in the bathroom. Then shampoo. Then makeup. Then hair products. A week later, half of the bathroom shelf belonged to her. She wasn't visiting anymore. She was slowly moving in. The crazy part? Nobody ever asked us if we were okay with it. She just kept bringing more stuff every few days. One day, it was a backpack. The next week, it was clothes. Then blankets. Then she somehow had her own shelf in the pantry. I remember opening the refrigerator one afternoon and realizing almost half of it was filled with groceries I'd never seen before. Different milk, different drinks, meal prep containers, fruit, yogurt. I looked around and actually laughed to myself because I realized we'd somehow had a fourth roommate without ever agreeing to have one. Then things started getting annoying. Really annoying. She'd leave dishes in the sink. She'd start laundry before leaving for work, meaning the washing machine sat full for hours. She'd invite one of her friends over while Tyler wasn't even home. That one confusing me the most. I came home from class one afternoon, and there was someone I had never met sitting in our own couch watching Netflix. She looked up and said, "Hey," like I was the one interrupting her day. I walked into the room and immediately texted the roommate group chat. "Do we know the person in our living room? Tyler replied, "Oh yeah, that's Ashley's friend." Okay, ... But Tyler wasn't even home. Neither was Ashley. There was literally a stranger hanging out in our own apartment by herself. That was the moment I realized we'd completely lost control of our own place. A few days later, the electric bill came in. Normally, it was around $90. This month, almost $170. At first, Tyler acted surprised. Then he said, "Well, I guess prices went up." No, prices didn't almost double in 30 days. An extra person was living here, using electricity, taking showers, doing laundry, charging devices, cooking meals, watching TV, running the air conditioning. But somehow she wasn't paying for any of it. The rest of us finally decided we needed to have a conversation. So one Sunday evening, we all sat down at the kitchen table. I tried to keep it respectful. I said, Look, nobody has a problem with Ashley being here, but she's basically living here now, and we think she should either help with pay the bills or spend less time here. Before Tyler could answer, Ashley did. She leaned back in her chair and laughed. Actually laughed. Then she said, "Wow, I didn't know you guys were keeping the score." I honestly thought she was joking. She wasn't. She genuinely believed we were being unreasonable. She kept saying things like, "I'm Tyler's guest. It's basically his apartment, too. I don't even take up that much space." Meanwhile, half the refrigerator belonged to her. Her clothes were in the laundry room. Her shoes were by the front door. She practically lived in the living room every evening. Finally, Chris, my other roommate, had enough. He looked right at Tyler and said, "Guests don't receive Amazon packages here." The entire room went silent, because the day before, an Amazon package had shown up with Ashley's name and our apartment address on it. She hadn't just been staying over, she had officially changed her shipping address. Tyler looked at the box sitting in the corner, then looked at Ashley. For the first time, he realized how ridiculous the situation had become. The conversation ended with Ashley storming out of the apartment. Tyler followed her. Neither of them came back that night. About a week later, Tyler told us they'd found another apartment together and would be moving out at the end of the month. Honestly, none of us argued. After they moved out, our utility bills dropped, the apartment stayed clean again, the refrigerator finally had empty space, and we all agreed on one thing. If someone ever wanted their boyfriend or girlfriend to move in again, they'd have to ask first. So that's the end of the first story, guys. Let me know if you like it down below, and let's get straight into the second one. Story 2. My roommate secretly charged people to stay in our apartment. So this happened about a year after I graduated. I had just started my first full-time job. To save money, I moved into a 2-bedroom apartment with a guy I'd known from high school. We weren't super close, but we'd always gotten along, so living together seemed like an easy decision. The first few months were great. He always paid rent on time, the apartment stayed clean, neither of us really bothered each other. Our schedules were completely opposite, so we barely even saw one another. I worked a normal 9 to 5, he worked nights. Most days we'd only cross paths for maybe 10 minutes. Then one Saturday morning, I walked into the kitchen to make breakfast. There was a guy sitting at our table. I had never seen him before. He looked up at me and said, "Hey." I figured he was one of my roommate's friends. No big deal. I grabbed some cereal, introduced myself, and asked where my roommate was. The guy looked confused. He said, "He's at work." That made me stop. If my roommate was at work, why was this random guy just hanging out in our apartment? I texted my roommate, "Hey, who's the guy in our kitchen?" He replied almost instantly, "Oh yeah, that's Kevin. He's just staying a couple nights." Alright. A little weird, but nobody mentioned it. But whatever. A couple of nights isn't the end of the world. Kevin left 2 days later. Then another guy showed up. A week after that, a different girl stayed for 3 nights. Then a couple stayed over. Then another guy. At first I thought my roommate just had a huge friend group, but something didn't add up. None of these people seemed to know him very well. Every single one asked me the exact same question. "Do you live here too?" The way they asked it sounded off, like they expected a different answer. One Friday evening, I came home from work and found 2 suitcases sitting in the hallway. There was another stranger making coffee in the kitchen. I finally asked him, "So how do you know my roommate?" He looked up at me like I was joking. "I booked this place online." I laughed. "What do you mean?" He pulled out his phone and he showed me. My stomach dropped. There was an online listing, photos of our apartment, our living room, our kitchen. Even my bedroom door was visible in one of the pictures. The listing described the apartment as quiet shared space with flexible check-in. My roommate had been renting our apartment out to complete strangers without telling me. I couldn't believe it. I asked the guy how much he'd paid. He said $85 a night. $85. He already stayed 3 nights. That meant my roommate had made over $250 from letting someone sleep in our apartment. I immediately started doing the math. All those random people over the last month, he wasn't letting friends crash. He was running an Airbnb inside our apartment. I called my roommate immediately. The second he answered, I said, "Why are random people paying to stay here?" There was a long silence. Then he sighed. "I was gonna tell you." No, he wasn't, because they had apparently been happening for weeks. He got home that night. We had a huge argument. He kept saying, They only stay a few nights. They're quiet. You barely notice them. Barely notice them. I had been sharing a bathroom with a stranger every week. People had access to everything I owned. They knew where I lived. They were literally sleeping 10 feet away from my room. Then he said something that made me even angrier. I needed extra money. I understand needing money. I didn't understand risking my safety without even asking. The next morning, I decided to see how many bookings he had actually had. I searched online. The listing was still active. There were reviews, actual reviews. People were complimenting the apartment. One review even mentioned the other roommate was friendly. They were talking about me. People had been reviewing our apartment without me even knowing they were paying guests. That was enough. I contacted their landlord. I honestly expected him to tell us to work it out ourselves. Instead, he showed up less than an hour later. Apparently, the lease specifically banned short-term rentals. My roommate didn't even try to deny it. He admitted everything. The landlord told him the listing had to come down immediately. He also wanted him that if it happened again, we both risk getting evicted. The part that scared me the most, I could have lost my apartment because of something I didn't even know was happening. Within a week, the listing disappeared, the stranger stopped showing up, things finally went back to normal. A month later, my roommate admitted he'd made almost $2,000 renting our apartment. $2,000. He thought it was worth risking both of us getting kicked out. When our lease ended, I moved out. We haven't spoken since. To this day, whenever I see a luggage sitting outside an apartment door, I can't help but wonder if someone else is secretly running an Airbnb. So that was the end of story 2. Let's get right into story 3. My roommate pretended to be broke, but was secretly scamming all of us. So this happened when I was 24. I had just moved into a 4-bedroom house with 3 other roommates. None of us really knew each other beforehand. We all found the listing online, met the landlord once, signed the lease, and moved in over the same weekend. One of my roommates, I'll call him Ryan, was incredibly quiet. Like, almost too quiet. He barely left his room, never watched TV, never hung out with us. He'd come home to say a quick hey and disappear for the rest of the night. Honestly, I figured he was just introverted. For the few months, there weren't any problems. Until rent was due 1 month. Our landlord texted the group chat asking why he hadn't received the full payment. Everyone replied that they'd already sent their share, except Ryan. About an hour later, Ryan messaged us privately. Guys, I'm really sorry. My hours got cut at work. I don't know if I can make rent this month. None of us wanted him to get kicked out, so we all chipped in a little extra to help him. He thanked us over and over. Said he'd pay us back as soon as things got better. We all felt bad for him. The next month, the same thing. This time his car supposedly broke down. The month after that, he said his bank had frozen his account. Every month there seemed to be a new emergency. At first, it was believable. Life happens, cars break, jobs cut hours, banks make mistakes. But after about 6 months, the excuses started sounding convenient. One roommate suggested asking him where he worked. Ryan got really defensive. He said he didn't like talking about where he worked. Fair enough. Some people are private. But then little things started standing out. Every few days, Amazon packages showed up with expensive electronics. A brand new gaming monitor, wireless headphones, a mechanical keyboard. One afternoon, a huge flat-screen TV was delivered. We all looked at each other. How does someone who can't afford rent keep buying all this expensive stuff? When we asked him about it, he laughed and said, "They're gifts. Every single time. Different gifts from different people." It didn't make much sense. One Saturday, I was working from home when someone knocked on the door. I answered it. Standing there was a guy I'd never seen before. He asked, "Is Ryan here?" I said yeah and went to grab him. Before Ryan even reached the door, the guy looked at me and asked, "Did he ever pay you back?" I froze. "What?" The guy sighed. Then he told me he'd loaned Ryan almost $1,500 6 months earlier. Ryan had completely disappeared afterward. My stomach dropped. I asked him how he even knew Ryan. He said they met online through a local marketplace. Ryan claimed he needed emergency money because his apartment had flooded. The guy felt bad, so he helped him. Then Ryan stopped answering his messages. As soon as Ryan saw who was standing outside, he turned around and walked right back into his room. He wouldn't even come to the door. The guy eventually left, but before he did, he said something that stuck with me. "If he's your roommate, you should probably Google his name." That night, the four of us sat around the kitchen table. One roommate typed Ryan's full name into Google. Within seconds, our jaws dropped. Page after page, small claims, court records, old Facebook pages warning people about him, marketplace complaints, people claiming he'd borrowed money and disappeared, people saying he'd never paid rent, even an old news article mentioning he'd been arrested years earlier for fraud-related charges. None of us could believe it. That wasn't bad luck. That was a pattern. We'd all fallen for the exact same story everyone else had. The next morning, we confronted him. At first, he denied everything. He claimed it was someone else with the same name. Then we showed him the court records. He went completely silent. Finally, he'd admitted he lied about almost everything. He hadn't lost his job, his hours were never cut, his bank account wasn't frozen. He'd been taking advantage of people because, in his own words, most people are too nice to say no. That sentence made me angrier than anything else. He knew exactly what he was doing. He wasn't desperate. He was counting on other people, feeling guilty. We immediately called the landlord. Within a few weeks, Ryan was gone. We never got the money back, not a single dollar. A few months later, one of my old roommates texted me. He'd seen Ryan's picture on social media. Apparently, he was looking for a roommate again, using the exact same story. To this day, whenever someone I barely know asks to borrow money because of some sudden emergency, I always remember Ryan. Sometimes people genuinely need help, but sometimes they're just looking for the next person who was willing to believe them. Alright guys, that's the end of story 3. If you guys like these stories and want more, please subscribe. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.